Hi, this is James Rousseau, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of the CoreLink Solution, where we look to empower you through awareness and actionable insights. On this episode, I am pleased to be joined by Melissa Wilson. Melissa is the founder and CEO of Networlding. A 5-time best-selling author, she partners with thought leaders that want to make a difference in the world. During our discussion, she talks about how she executes that work of helping authors and discusses her latest book written with Billy Dexter, Making Your Network, the Art and Science of Career and Business Networking. When Billy was here with us, he talked about the art of networking, and now Melissa digs into the science. So sit back, buckle up, as we're about to link up with Melissa Wilson. All right, we're here for another edition of the CoreLink Solution, where we try to provide you with empowerment through awareness and actionable insights. I'm pleased today to have a good friend and partner, someone who's helped me a lot with and part of my journey, Melissa Wilson from Networlding. Melissa, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. And we are on, I wish I could say a bright sunny day. It's not. We're here at Kellogg on a nice rainy day. Melissa came in from downtown. We're up here in Evanston, and big shout out again to Kellogg School of Management for allowing us to use the facilities. Melissa is the founder of Networlding and Networlding Publishing. She's also a 5-time best-selling author. And I think, Melissa, you've published over 20 books, if I remember correctly.
I'm working on number 18 and 19 right now.
18,
actually.
19. Yes. Okay. I thought I saw 20.
Well, I stopped counting. I really did. I'm sorry.
I think you're over 20. You probably don't remember. But why don't you take a few minutes and introduce yourself and Networlding and what you do?
Okay. I like to say that I'm the best friend of thought leaders who want to make a difference in the world. And a couple years ago, I decided, you certainly filled the criteria about a make a difference author, but I decided after working with authors who, there were some of them that had their first focus was on making money, that our values conflicted with one another. So 2 years ago, what I call my turnkey book creation process, I decided that I was going to just focus on make a difference authors. And today in this world of self-publishing, I'm what would be termed a hybrid or partner publisher. And that's where I like to work a lot now, so that authors who have a book inside of them or either had a book that they want updated, I just did a couple like that myself and the team that I work with, because I don't like to work alone. I like to really have a team approach so we can really serve the author more throughout the process, that they are really helped in bringing out books that I would say, just like Jim Collins' Good to Great,
right.
The goal is to take a good book, the good ideas, and turn all of that into a great book and a sustainable model for the author, and then all the people that the author serves.
Right. And you just do such a fabulous job at it. Why don't you, well, actually, let me, I'm kind of alluding to it, and I'll just tell a quick story. So sure. Melissa helped me bring out Success on Your Own Terms, my book, Success on Your Own Terms, 6 Promises to Fire, Be Passionate, Ignite Your Career, and Create an Amazing Life. And through the process of writing that book, Melissa helped me, well, 2 things. One, Melissa was a part writer and helping me in the background with writing the book. But Melissa actually, I think, would have been a totally different book without Melissa, because I would have written a very business technical book, I would probably call it. I was sticking to the what happened in the office, right? And kind of the business aspects of the book. And what Melissa did was help pull out my personal story to weave throughout the book. And I think one of the things you said to me during one of the first coaching sessions was, people want to understand the whole thing in order for it to really make sense, right? I think was one of your points of coaching. So you were really instrumental in helping make that book everything it's become to be. So
that means a great deal. The other thing, because it's been at least 5 years since we worked together, that I see now is how important signature stories are. And I know that you're going to interview Billy Dexter, who we've worked on a wonderful book called Making Your Network, that the signature stories, it was actually the first time. So the Shoemaker's Children went shoeless with me. I've done a lot of books, but never put in so many personal stories myself.
Right.
So I learned firsthand the advice I was giving you. Billy's the one who challenged me to put my stories in.
Right.
And as a result, so many people feel more connected.
Yes.
And so one of the simplest tips here, I usually tell people before they're going to start a book is think of your 15 signature stories. And the reason I say 15 is that it's a nice enough number. You've got enough stories. They don't all have to go in the book, but everyone has them, and they really help implicitly and explicitly show who you are rather than just tell who you are.
That's great. Great advice. And would you say, with all the experience you've had, that a large majority of people, half the people, 25% of the population, what would you say in terms of the number of people who probably have a book inside of them to a certain degree?
That's a great question. I think the people who have the book inside of them, just like writers say, who are really prolific, many, many times, majority of times, they say, I couldn't not write. It had to come out because there's a pain inside of them, an urgency.
Right.
So those people who have those feelings and then are looking for a pathway, I would have to say it really is probably upwards of 50%.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, as you recall, I was not burning.
Yeah.
I had no burning desire to write.
That's right.
My book was by accident, but that's a whole nother story.
Now, that's a good title for a book by accident.
Book by accident.
Yes, it sounds almost like a murder mystery.
You're right, exactly. So one of the things, I would love you to spend a few minutes on networlding, right?
Yes.
Because one of the things you do in a fascinating way is help people think about networking differently, right?
Yes.
And we're going to talk with Billy Dexter at another time and play that podcast separately. But talk about that. What does networlding do?
Networlding is where I was writing all kinds of different books and had all kinds of different publishers, and ended up meeting a woman who challenged Chris Galvin to open up Motorola. And that was Jocelyn Carter Miller. And that was in the year, it was prior to the year 2000. So it must have been something like 1998. And I met her, and I was doing a book on strategic alliances. And my question to her, which is a great question to ask from a networking standpoint for any leader, is what's one thing in your life you haven't done that you still want to do? Because the chances are, I'm kind of showing you what networlding is, that we have shrunk from 6 degrees or 5 people away from anyone we want to meet to 2 degrees, which means we're only 1 person away. And LinkedIn, which is a billion-dollar tool that anybody should be utilizing, that is a 3-degree model. And most of the time, whenever I would go out and I would train people on how to use LinkedIn, was something I did as a networking expert, I would always get people saying, wow, you're like a magician because everything leads back to you. But that's what I term, and you'll find out when you hear from Billy, the science of networks. I was a social scientist because I have a degree in sociology, and I always wanted to be a scientist when I was young. So with networlding, the evolution of it with Jocelyn, I was working on networking, teaching accountants how to network and bankers how to network. And then when I met Jocelyn, when I asked her that question, what's one thing you haven't done you'd like to do? She said, I'd like to write a book. So at that time, my publisher was Josie Bass. It was owned by Simon & Schuster. And my editor, he would ask me, because I had already done a couple of books with them, what's your next book? And I said, well, I have on my mind to do a book with somebody who she opened up Latin America for Motorola and challenged Chris Galvin to have a woman open up in a country where that's very, very much male dominated. And I think she'd make for a great co-author, because the other thing about me that I've realized through life, and one of the big secrets, is sharing is what it's all about. If you share, you get so much more than the sum of your parts.
Right.
So it was fun to work with her, because that led me actually to a $500,000 contract with Motorola, because Jocelyn, and this is what happens, and I'm sure you can agree with this, whenever I work with authors, 9 times out of 10, they get promoted. great things happen to them because that's what a book does. It lifts your career. So Jocelyn got promoted to become the first CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Motorola, and brought me in to help learn about marketing. So we got to focus on work with Procter & Gamble, Amazon, all these different companies to transfer their best practices for Motorola. And it was wonderful because that set me off on a 10-year trajectory. After 10 years working with entrepreneurs in Chicago, I was working with corporations. And that was really fun because even one year, the way I met Billy Dexter, 6 Degrees of Billy Dexter, is that I was housed in. I actually got a center that was gifted to me at Regis. They gave me 8 seats and I got to help all these entrepreneurs. But at that time, I met Jocelyn, was working with Motorola. I thought I'd have a contest for the best networkers in the world.
Right.
And that's where I had 10 people. Billy won one of them, and we've stayed together. And now it's the year 2018, and we just finished a networking book blending both of our models.
Right.
And the base of networking is building mutually beneficial relationships to create transformational opportunities. And that's different. Where I was at Fortune Brands once, and there was a woman who has written 2 of the top 10 books for women, Sally Helgesen, Female Advantage and Thriving 24/7. And she had said that, I know you want to talk about the support exchange model. She said that's the holy grail for building relationships.
Support exchange model?
The support exchange model. And that's something that I got to practice for 10 years with all these corporations.
Right.
And so when I was at this conference with Sally Helgesen, I said to these young women and it was focused on the young women, even though they always brought in the male leadership at the companies, I said, would you want to work with somebody this year who said to you, let's create an opportunity? Or would you want to work with somebody who said, let's create or co-create a transformational opportunity? And these 2 young women got this. And usually after I do events, when I was speaking, we would have a social hour. And these 2 young women, one was African-American, one was white, and they came over running to me when I was in a crowd talking to people. And they were basically shouting, we're going to create a transformational opportunity this year for our company. And I thought, wow, if all companies could have people thinking this way, wouldn't this be awesome? Yeah, it hasn't happened yet, but it's on the table now because we're looking at working with Heidrick with their women's network. And I think someday it's coming. But James, the big thing that, since we haven't talked in 5 years, the thing that I discovered with you and all the other authors is everybody wanted to do a chapter in their leadership books on networking.
Right.
So I started looking up in Google formal business networking programs.
Right.
But first I started with formal business mentoring programs or formal mentoring programs in companies. There are over 200,000 mentoring programs.
Inside of companies.
But there are virtually no formal networking programs. And yet that's 80% plus of the way people get jobs. And that has been validated 3 times over. I have all the sources validating that
Interesting.
now.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So the book, for everyone, I'm going to highly recommend you pick it up, that Melissa and Billy Dexter have done together, is called How to Make Your Net Work.
It's Making Your Net Work.
Making Your Net Work,
yes.
the art and science.
The art and science of career and business networking. And so Billy takes the, kind of like Crossfire, he takes the art side, I take the science side. Of course, he's learned the science side. It's natural to have the art, it's the charisma. But there's also just wonderful insights. And when I worked with Billy on that book, 2 years back and forth going, and I had to meet with him in person so he would focus on his book. Because that's how executives are. They're very busy. But you, James, you did focus and you got your book done, and that was good. But Billy, I needed to be in person.
Well, I was talking to him throughout when you guys were working on it, so I would be talking to him every now and then. Yeah,
that's right.
So.
And usually the best books, you rewrite a couple times.
Right.
Well, but the one thing that was such an amazing experience with Billy is I actually created, because he created something I'd never seen before in networking, and I call them connection hubs. He actually has 5 or more spots that he has built significant hubs of connection.
Sure.
So I call it the hubs of mass connection. And that makes his life get easier rather than harder every year.
One of the things, and I'm going to encourage people to pick it up, because most of us have grown up understanding networking, the intuitive benefits of networking, right? On the opposite side of it is this natural, I'm going to call it 2 things, fear and disdain. Okay. There's some common fear of, what will I say? What would I do? For me, the room's going to be hot, right? I'm going to get uncomfortable. Or some folks, it feels disingenuous, so on and so forth. And what Billy and Melissa do to me extremely well, because I was talking to Billy about, I know currently we have the soft copy out, the hard copy's coming, and he asked me for some commentary to go into the hard copy, and I'm still getting together, but here were some of my thoughts. One, you guys did a great job at quickly disarming and helping people understand some of those common fears. You laid them out early of, these are some of the things people are worried about, and here's some of the ways to think about it. But then 2, approach it differently, looking to give first, right? And if you look to give first, you start to feel very different. Yeah. If you understand, if you give first, then there's the, to pay it forward, and you'll see it come back. And then 3 is these pieces I wanted to talk about, what you call the networking support exchange in these 7 areas.
That's right. And it started in networking, and we have blended it to the networking support exchange model, if you will. But the support exchange model, what I've identified, and it's been validated because we've implemented these, the exchange model all over, is think about it this way, as if you had a card deck. I actually created cards out of these. So you've got emotional support at the bottom level, which is the base, and you could imagine it as a triangle, or it's just one level after another, but everything really starts with emotional support.
Sure.
If people don't think you care, and that also comes over to all the marketing you do, the sales you do, life turns on this. If people don't feel you care, it's, to know, like, and trust, when you're talking about marketing or sales. But the getting to know you and everything about social media is about that element of trust.
Right.
And so I know you also have a spiritual edge and center to everything you do. And I do too. And what I love about this piece of it, this trust piece, is I did do a book called Angels in the Workplace, and took 7 spiritual beliefs and showed how in each chapter there were 7 people that in the faith, there are 7 people that espouse that as their leading belief, and then hope, charity, courage, truth, trust, and love. But working on that book for a year, and I would analyze the Old and New Testaments, all the quotes, everything I could find on those words. All the words dovetailed into the word trust.
Gotcha.
So we're looking at engagement and trust, and there's a great book out called Trust Agents. Trust is a critical factor today. Fake news, not.
Right.
So the idea here of the emotional support are all the things you can do to start a conversation to build that groundswell of exchange and connection. And the reason I call it the exchange, by the way, is that if you're looking for a sustainable model, and I explain to people, and Billy is give first, and it's not that you don't give first, because it starts the process.
Right.
But I would say, think of, we give trees carbon dioxide, they thrive off of that. Trees give us what? Oxygen, right? So we've got an exchange right there. And in the sustainable model, imagine if you helped somebody and helped them and helped them and helped them, and they never even thanked you.
Right.
that's that's something that it's not, you're not going to grow from that.
Right.
So the real opportunity is having an exchange. So there's emotional support at the base, there's knowledge support that follows that, information support, and then knowledge, which is information and experience. And then with the fourth level, I usually go to promotional support, and that could look like me asking you, James, what's new with you? And you'd say your podcast. And one of the requests you had is, who would you recommend for future podcasts? So that's a promotional exchange. And it helps me continue helping you, but it also makes me look good and helpful. And then I help my other colleagues who I believe in. So it is this virtuous, ongoing, sustainable model.
Right.
And you can, when that's going to help you sustain what you're doing. And that's really what it should be. It's if you have an exchange, you keep building. So we're on level 4 promotional support. Then you go to wisdom support. And in every level, we have questions that people can ask, and then areas of support they can give others. And especially women. Women don't ask for support enough. There was a book by 2 Yale professors about that. So this is especially good for them because women tend to overgive. Many women do. So you've got that, you've got the wisdom support, and then you eventually move to the 6th level, which is transformational opportunities. If you're really working these exchanges, you get to a transformational space.
Right.
And we found the number one belief through all the research we did of top networkers through the years. I mean, we're talking, I've been at this over 15 years, and of course, Billy has too. So we represent 30 years of being practitioners in the space, that the number one belief of top performing networkers is anything is possible.
Right.
And so because they have that belief, transformational opportunities fit for that. And so we do have an assessment. We do have the 7 levels of support. And what I used to do when I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs prior to going corporate for 10 years and helping corporations and leaders in corporations was the 7th level emerged, which is giving back and community. And I'm passionate about that. So I had the honor of having a book on Oprah called 50 Fabulous Places to Raise Your Family. I was the new author on the 2nd edition. So I got to keep 40 cities, trade out 10, and I got to do leadership events and meet leaders in all these, what I call can-do cities around the country.
Right.
So I see that eventually coming back around with all the authors I'm helping now, a way to get into the communities and really help from the ground up.
Gotcha.
And I think we have a big trend flowing and growing around local. So the one thing I'd say is, imagine if you had a deck of cards and you had 7 cards for each level that you could go and connect with. And we had a game where you'd meet people in the room and actually start exchanging with them. What happens for a lot of people who are the best networkers, they will give all their cards away, and then they have no cards at the end of the year. And a lot of, especially women, didn't realize that until I showed them the empty box. And that's a very powerful thing.
So how long have you been working, using this model, and how have you helped corporations implemented it? Because you've worked with a lot of corporations, right?
I've worked with a lot of corporations, but we've not been able to scale. The way it works is the science of networks, and this is all, if you will, the tipping point actualized. When Gladwell came out with the tipping point in 2002, and I came out with Networking with Jocelyn in the year 2000, and we did take 1,000 people through the process, and we partnered with the Chicagoland Chamber. But with all of the implementation, Gladwell talks about maven salespeople and connectors. And what we discovered is that you can be all 3. You can be smart, you can be persuasive, and you can then be a connector. And I'd rather have somebody who discernibly connects.
Right.
And because our brains are neural networks, our transportation systems are networks, television is a network, and the internet is the network of all networks. It's fascinating that we don't realize that a better way, if I asked you, James, who can I connect with? Most of us have an average of 250 people in their network. At least they used to. Now people have more.
Yes.
But what's happening, sadly, and it makes sense, is our bandwidth is decreasing because of the numbers. Our attention spans are waning. And if I ask you that question, you're probably going to go into gridlock because you may have 10 people and your brain's racing around. If I, though, ask you, James, who's the one person right now that you're really connected to that is open, they have space in their day, that might be a good mentor for me, your neural network is going to sort and find that person. Who do you think is the best?
Right.
So I've made a specific request. You're going to sort through and you're going to give me the best. And I can always go back and ask for another. If I come back and I say, look, I worked with John and he was wonderful. I was able to help him with this. He was able to help me with that. I want to thank you so much. Do you happen to have one more person?
Right.
So if you imagine that you had 10 people, and that's another thing social scientists know, is that some say we're the sum total of the 10 people we spend the most time with. Jocelyn, when she became the CMO of Motorola and we were working on networking, she felt in her primary circle, I call it the power of 10 just to keep it simple. Gladwell said you can't have any more than 15 really connected relations in your life at once,
right,
and really spend time with them. So I felt it was easier to go with 10 because you've got your family, your friends. But 10 gives you an easy way to move the metrics. So the power of 10 circle, and noting that the one axiom that always holds true is you're only as strong as your weakest link. So when you go through the networking process blended with Billy's processes together, that piece really helps you because you can then have great exchanges. And we start with step one, which is find people with similar and complementary values.
Right.
So that was a wonderful way to connect. And it's really about quality that equals quantity, not quantity equaling quality. You have to focus on the few. So it's paradoxical.
Yeah.
And it's like asking, would you have one Oprah in your network or 500 Jerry Springers? And sorry, Jerry, I actually flew home with him once, not with him, but on a plane he was on. And I think most people would go with Oprah.
Yeah, right. It's funny. You just made me think of 2 flights ago. I flew home from Chicago and I was hitting this. Oh my God. She's never probably listened to this podcast, but I'm on the plane and I'm hitting this woman. I hit this woman's foot in front of me. And she'd never said anything, never complained. Don't you know, when we get off the plane, it was Patti LaBelle. I felt so bad, right? Hit Patty's foot. So anyway, so let me ask you a question and kind of wrapping up.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that, because Jim Rohn has it's on the same track, but different.
Is. Yes, I know
You're the
about
average
Jim.
of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
So a lot
right?
of people go with 5, some go with 10. Yeah.
So discerning that and trying to manage that, right?
Yeah.
I have my way of doing it, but how do you suggest that people get to that state of identifying those people?
Yes. So the one thing I will say, you know, especially for your listeners, because it's part of, I'm in my give back mode, you know, and helping authors now because I felt I could make a bigger difference. So I help 10 authors on average a year. And so I practice the power of 10 circle and it works very well.
Right.
But the idea here is to find one and practice, just like, you know, get the process there. But the other give back here is that people who email me, and they do, and we also, if you get the Making Your Net workbook, I also gift people with the guidebook. I just send it to them.
Got it.
So they can practice it. But it has all the exercises that we've tested and tested and tested so that you can go start your own power of 10 circle. Whether it's 10, you could have one other person.
Right.
You could start at 1-to-1. So I say it's 1-to-1, one to a small group. When you look at the churches that have thrived and grown to great numbers, because I worked at a place where I wrote white papers about this, that you find churches with upwards, there's one in Seoul, Korea that has 1 million members and 100,000 small groups of 10.
Gotcha.
And if also you started with 10 and then you had each person start another circle from the first 10 and expanded on the 6th wave or 6 degrees, which is a phenomenon that we all realize now, the small world concept, we're closer than we think to everyone.
Right.
You get to 1 million people.
Gotcha.
So it's incredibly powerful, the growth that you can have, but start small to grow big. That's the paradox. And for anyone, and I guess I'm saying, if you read the book, make the request to me and I will send you the guidebook if you want to get started. My greatest wish is that you would, and that we could help you grow, change your life, and make the world a better place all at the same time. Hallelujah.
Wow. That's a big offer. So
Yeah.
What's the best way for them to reach out to you to get it?
My site is Networlding, net and then world and then ing, but they can also find me if they type in Melissa G. Wilson, G as in good. You can reach me there. And I've got all kinds of cool stuff on the site now. I've got freebies for anybody who wants to write a book. I've got 3 books they can have.
Perfect.
And the Making Your Network book is just something that I do think it's a gift that you could give to yourself and give to others.
Awesome.
That would keep on giving.
And we'll include this in the show notes on the Core Link Solution site as well. So you preempted the last question I like to wrap up with, since you already know, because you're prepared, because you actually read what I emailed. So knowing that for this audience, we like to empower folks through awareness and actionable insight by bringing folks like you on. Who else do you know that you think we should know?
Well, of course, Billy, who is the best networker in the world that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have, should I mention them now?
Sure.
Okay. There's a woman named Brenda Dunn Kinney I'm going to introduce you to, and she has done so much for young people. And that's where I think it's incredible. And she's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. She works and helps companies with their call centers, and putting the heart in there as well as the science, which certainly doing well by doing good. So she's one person. And then I have so many authors, and I did mention somebody, Billy will probably say this, but so you can tell him not to mention unless he wants to duplicate it. But I think you should get Joseph Bradley, who has done the book Questioneering, because it's so much fun and it will open up your world even more expansively. And so he's the other one I'd recommend at this time.
That's great. Thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you guys for listening to another edition of the Core Link Solution. Thank you for linking up with me for another episode of the Core Link Solution. You are informed, empowered, and now can be accountable. A few takeaways for me from this episode for those who are considering writing a book, and I know that's many of you. Number 1, begin working on your 15 signature stories. Again, Melissa talked about that being her advice that she imparts on any new potential author. Number 2, the power of 10 circle, and noting that you are only as strong as your weakest link. Find people with similar and complementary values. And then number 3, find one person you can give back to and then build that one-on-one relationship. Let it grow from there. Find one person and let it grow from there. Those are my takeaways, but again, I know you have more, so please send them to me. I'd add them to the show notes as you send them to me. Further, if you find this podcast to be of value, please subscribe, rate, and review. As you listen to these podcasts, you're going to have questions. Here's some things that are new to you, terminology you may not have heard before. All of those things are good. I'm here to serve. Go to the website, thecorelinksolution.com, and right below the show notes, you'll see the comments section. You can ask questions, mention challenges you face in the areas we serve in, and tell me about other guests you want to hear from. Alternatively, you can do the same through all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Thank you for linking up, and see you next episode. Be informed, be empowered, be accountable.